In 2021, South Korea sold $7.3 billion of weapons abroad. By 2025, that number had more than doubled to $15.4 billion. And the forecast for 2026? Almost $37 billion in combined defense revenue from Korea's top 4 arms firms. 5 years ago, almost nobody outside Asia bought Korean weapons. Now Poland, Romania, Iraq, Peru, Saudi Arabia, even European NATO states are lining up. How did the country that builds your Samsung phone quietly become the world's newest superpower in tanks, artillery, and fighter jets? To understand just how big this is, lay out the numbers. According to Korea's Defense Acquisition Program Administration, the country's official arms export tracker, South Korea booked $15.4 billion in defense exports during 2025. That's a 60% jump from 2024, when exports came in at $9.5 billion. And it's only a couple of billion shy of the all-time record, which was $17.3 billion back in 2022. Look at the 5-year trend, and the trajectory is unmistakable. 2021, $7.3 billion. 2022, the record at $17.3 billion. 2023, $13.5 billion. 2024, $9.5 billion. 2025, $15.4 billion. The numbers wiggle year to year because most deals are huge lumpy contracts that book in a single quarter, but the average has more than doubled compared to the early 2010s. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, the standard reference for global arms data, ranks South Korea as the world's 10th largest exporter of major weapons systems for the period 2020 to 2024. Korea now accounts for about 2.2% of all global arms exports. That doesn't sound huge, until you remember that 10 years earlier, the same number was 0.9%. Korea's slice of the global weapons trade has more than doubled in a decade, and the South Korean government wants much more. The official policy target, set under what's called the Defense Industry Innovation Plan, is to crack the top 4 exporters worldwide by 2027. To get there, Korea would need to outpace Germany and China and chase the United States, Russia, and France. Analysts at major Korean securities houses now think the combined arms revenue of just 4 Korean defense firms, Hanwha Aerospace, LIG Next One, Hyundai Rotem, and Korea Aerospace Industries, will hit $37.4 billion in 2026. That figure includes both domestic and export business, but it's a 10-figure signal that capacity is being built out at a sprint. This isn't a one-off boom. It's an industrial strategy. If you want to understand how this happened so fast, start with one country, Poland. In July of 2022, just 5 months after Russia invaded Ukraine, Warsaw signed what was, at the time, the largest arms package in modern European history with South Korea. The framework deal covered 3 flagship Korean systems: the K2 Black Panther main battle tank, the K9 Thunder self-propelled howitzer, and the FA-50 light combat aircraft. The numbers behind that deal are extraordinary. $5.7 billion formally signed in late August 2022 for an initial 180 K2 tanks, 212 K9 howitzers, and 48 FA-50 jets. A second K9 contract followed in December 2023, valued at $2.6 billion, for an additional 152 howitzers, most of them a new variant called the K9PL, designed specifically for Polish requirements. Then in 2025, Poland inked a second K2 tank deal worth about $6.5 billion for 180 more tanks. And crucially, many of those will be built inside Poland by Polish workers in partnership with Hyundai Rotem, not shipped from Korea. And on the very last day of 2025, hanwha signed a third execution contract with Poland worth $4.1 billion, this time for Chunmoo guided rocket systems. Add it all up, and Poland alone has committed somewhere north of $18 billion to Korean weapons in under 4 years. By the end of 2025, Korea had finished delivering the first batch of 212 K9 howitzers to Poland. turning Poland into the holder of what military analysts call Europe's largest single artillery fleet. The K2 tank deliveries are running in parallel, and the Fa-50 jets are already flying with the Polish Air Force. Why Poland? Why so fast? Poland sits on NATO's eastern flank, sharing a border with Belarus and a short stretch with the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. After February 2022, Warsaw decided it needed to rearm faster than any European partner could deliver. German, French, and American factories were quoting wait times of 5, 7, even 10 years. Korea quoted weeks. Within months of the first signature, K9 howitzers were rolling off Polish docks. That speed, and the second crucial ingredient we'll get to next, turned Poland into the proving ground for the entire Korean defense export model. So why does Poland, and now a dozen other countries, pick Korean weapons over American, German, or French alternatives? 3 reasons: speed, price, and tech transfer. Start with price. The K2 Black Panther tank costs roughly half of what an American M1 Abrams sells for on the export market. A new Abrams to a foreign buyer can run north of $24 million per unit fully equipped. The K2, depending on configuration, is closer to $8 to $13 million. For a country like Poland trying to build a fleet of 1,000+ tanks on a hard deadline, that price gap means hundreds of extra tanks, or a whole second weapon system, for the same budget. The same arithmetic applies to the K9 howitzer versus its German competitor, the PZH 2000, where the Korean unit is roughly 40% cheaper. Speed is the second pillar. South Korea's defense industrial base was originally built to outfit the world's 10th largest army at speed against a North Korean force that could attack with little warning. That means Korean factories were already configured to mass produce, not boutique produce. Hyundai Rotem's K2 line, hanwha's K9 line, KS Fa-50 line, these are running at scale. When Poland signed in 2022, Korea delivered the first K2 tanks the same year. The first Abrams from a fresh American order? Years. The third pillar is the killer one: tech transfer and local production. Korea is willing to do something the US, Germany, and France routinely refuse. Let the buyer build the weapons inside its own factories, using its own workers, with Korean engineering and licenses. Poland is now assembling K2 tanks domestically as part of the second contract. Romania is negotiating something similar. This turns a one-shot arms deal into a long-term industrial partnership. The buyer gets jobs, technology, and supply security. Korea gets ongoing royalties, spare parts revenue, and a strategic foothold that lasts 30 years. That bundle, half the price, a tenth of the weight, and tech transfer in the box, is something no major arms exporter has been willing to match. It's not really a weapons strategy. It's a manufacturing strategy that happens to make weapons. South Korea is selling export-grade industrial policy along with the hardware, and that combination is why the order book keeps growing. The most striking number in the new SIPRI data set isn't Korea's overall rank. It's where Korean weapons are going. In 2024, South Korea supplied 8.6% of all major arms imported by European NATO states. Put differently, of every 100 weapons systems flowing into NATO Europe, almost 9 now come from Korea. The only larger supplier is the United States. Think about that. A country in East Asia, separated from Europe by 10,000 kilometers, sharing no historical military alliances with most of NATO, has become, in the span of 3 years, the alliance's second-largest external arms supplier. That's not a vendor relationship anymore. That's a strategic dependency. The path was opened by the Ukraine war. When Russian forces crossed the border in February 2022, European arsenals that had spent 30 years drawing down suddenly looked dangerously thin. Stocks of artillery shells, tanks, anti-aircraft missiles, even basic ammunition, depleted from decades of sending old equipment to Iraq, Afghanistan, or simply scrapping it as a peace dividend. European NATO states had to choose: wait for German and French factories to scale up, or buy off the shelf from someone who could ship immediately. Korea was waiting, but there's a constraint. Officially, South Korea has a policy of not transferring lethal aid to countries in active conflict. That's why Korea sells freely to Poland, a NATO state not at war, but has not directly armed Ukraine. Some Korean ammunition has reportedly reached Ukraine indirectly through the U.S. restocking program, where Washington sends its own stocks to Kyiv and replaces them with Korean shells, but Seoul will not confirm it publicly. This is a delicate balance. Korean weapons are arming the NATO flank that backstops Ukraine, without Seoul ever appearing on the donor list. That separation is exactly what makes Korean weapons palatable to buyers like Romania, Slovakia, Norway, Estonia, Finland, and the Baltic states, countries that want NATO-grade hardware, but also want a non-American option in case future U.S. administrations turn unpredictable. Korean weapons are NATO interoperable without being American. For a Europe nervous about U.S. commitment under shifting administrations in Washington, that's an increasingly attractive feature, and you can see it in the order book. Romania, Norway, and Estonia all signed or expanded Korean orders in the 18 months after the 2024 U.S. election. Poland is the anchor, but it's no longer the whole story. In December 2025, Hyundai Rotem signed a $2 billion framework agreement with Peru to supply 54 K2 tanks and 141 wheeled armored vehicles, Korea's first major tank export into Latin America. Korea is now in active negotiations with Romania, Iraq, Morocco, and Saudi Arabia for further K2 deals, and Hyundai Rotem says it's targeting a price point of around $8 million per K2 to undercut the Abrams in third-country competitions throughout 2026. The F-A-50 light combat jet, built by Korea Aerospace Industries, has spread even faster. It's flying for Poland, Iraq, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Thailand. Iraq alone bought 24. Malaysia signed for 18. The Philippines is acquiring 12 more in a follow-on order. The jet is positioned as the affordable answer for air forces that can't justify the cost of an F-16, and it sells in batches of 12 to 24 at roughly $30 million per aircraft. Then there's the K9 howitzer, which is now in service or on order with Norway, Estonia, Finland, Turkey, Australia, India, Egypt, the UAE, and several others. The K9 user community is now the second largest in the world for any single self-propelled howitzer design. Some defense analysts have started calling it the AK-47 of modern artillery, not for its sophistication, but for the sheer number of armies that have standardized on it. A few specific data points to anchor the scope. Combined, more than 9 countries operate or have ordered K2 tanks. More than 10 operate or have ordered K9 howitzers. More than 7 fly the F-A-50. And as of early 2026, Korea is in active sales conversations with somewhere around 20 additional governments, including Canada, which is reviewing the K9 for its artillery modernization program. This is what makes the trajectory feel sustainable rather than a one-Poland spike. Korea is not depending on one buyer. It is being added to long list, short list, and contracts signed across 5 continents simultaneously. The supply side, Korean factories, is being scaled by the orders. And once a buyer commits to a Korean platform, the maintenance, ammunition, and upgrade revenue locks in for 30 years. That's the part of the story that often gets missed. The upfront tank deal is just the down payment on a multi-decade service contract. None of this is guaranteed to keep going. 3 risks are worth watching in 2026. First, U.S. tariffs. President Trump's second-term administration has signaled tariffs on a wide range of Korean industrial exports. And while defense is often carved out of trade fights, the Korean arms boom is downstream of broader manufacturing competitiveness. If Korean steel, electronics, and machine tools become more expensive in the U.S. market, that pressure washes back into export pricing for Korean weapons too, because the same supply chains, the same engineers, and the same logistics network feed both the consumer side and the defense side of Korean industry. Second, geopolitical limits. Korea sells freely to NATO and most of the developing world, but it does not sell to countries actively at war, and it doesn't sell to regimes that Washington frowns on. Some of Korea's near-term sales pipeline, particularly in the Middle East, runs into U.S. in-use restrictions because Korean weapons often contain American-licensed components, from engines to sensors to fire control electronics. Washington has, in the past, quietly blocked Korean arms transfers to specific countries on those grounds. As Korea's exports grow, those friction points will grow with them, and Seoul will have to negotiate more end-use waivers more often. Third, the dependency on Poland is itself a risk. If Polish elections produce a government less eager to spend $20+ billion on military modernization, the visible momentum of the Korean defense industry could stall almost overnight. Roughly a third of Korea's 2022 record total was a single country, Poland. Diversification across Romania, Iraq, Peru, and the Gulf is happening, but it takes years for those orders to scale to Poland's magnitude. And there's a quieter constraint that almost nobody talks about: South Korea's own military. Every K2 tank Hyundai Rotem ships to Poland is a tank not delivered to the Korean army that originally designed it. Every K9 sent to Egypt is one not in Korea's own artillery fleet, which still faces North Korea across the most heavily armed border on Earth. As exports scale, Seoul has to decide how much industrial capacity to dedicate to its own armed forces versus its rapidly growing customer base. That's a strategic question Korea has never had to answer at this scale before, and the answer will shape not just the order book, but Korea's own deterrence posture on the peninsula. The country that became the world's hottest arms dealer in 5 years now has a much harder question to handle in the next 5. How to stay one without weakening itself at home. If you found this useful, hit subscribe. We publish one Asia data story every day, and the next one is already in the works.